Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, beginning with a news item on page number 1 of the Delhi edition of The Hindu relevant for GS paper 2. Nirbhaya case convict claims mental illness. Let's understand this issue of capital punishment or death penalty in detail, and then you will understand whether those who have been convicted, they are waiting for capital punishment, and if they are suffering from mental illness, whether some protection is available to these convicts or not. We will understand the arguments in favor of capital punishment as well as the arguments against capital punishment. So there is a raging debate going on in the country. Should capital punishment be abolished? We will have arguments both in favor as well as against. Number one, there is section 302 of Indian Penal Code. This section 302 prescribes death penalty, capital punishment for those who have been convicted under serious offences. Is this section 302 of Indian Penal Code violative of Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which talks about right to life and personal liberty? Supreme Court repeatedly has said no. Article 21 is not getting violated if those convicts who have been booked under serious offences, if these convicts are hanged. That means section 302 of Indian Penal Code is constitutional. Why? Because Article 21 is not an absolute fundamental right. There are some exceptions under which your right to life and personal liberty can be snatched. And one exception is if procedure established by law is followed. So there is a procedure, section 302 of Indian Penal Code, death penalty or capital punishment is constitutional. But should India continue or persist with capital punishment, or is it time for India to abolish capital punishment and join the list of more than 100 countries of the world which have abolished capital punishment? First up, let's look at the arguments in favor of capital punishment, why India should retain capital punishment or death penalty. Argument number one, death sentence acts as a deterrent. There are individuals who do not resort to crimes, for example, murder, rape, dacoity. Why? Because they fear the law. If the law says if you commit a crime, you will be hanged, that means capital punishment acts as a deterrent. It prevents others from committing the crime. That is why capital punishment must be retained. Argument number two, let's say for example, if we abolish capital punishment, then we have to go for life imprisonment. That means when we go for life imprisonment, all those who have been convicted for serious crimes, we will have to keep them in jail throughout their life. But that would involve additional expenditure on these convicts. Additional expenditure in the form of medical treatment, in the form of food. Why should taxpayers' money be misused and used to keep these convicts alive if they are serving life imprisonment? That is why kill them, hang them. That is another objective of capital punishment. To save public money, to save the taxpayers' money, those who have been booked for serious offences, hang them. That's another argument in favor of capital punishment. Third is to prevent future commission of crimes. Let's say for example, I am a murderer, and if I am hanged, one thing we know for sure, I cannot commit murder again. I cannot commit another crime again. That means once these convicts have been hanged, they have been killed, it ensures one thing for sure, that these individuals who have been killed, they cannot commit another crime again because they are too dead to commit another crime. That's another argument in favor of capital punishment. Argument number four, to prevent hostage-like situation. Something that we saw when IC-814, the Indian Airlines plane, was hijacked. This plane was hijacked, then this plane was taken to Dubai, then to Kandahar, and Kandahar then was the capital of the Taliban-administered Afghanistan. There, all these passengers were taken hostage, negotiations were carried out, and in return for these hostages, the terrorists asked for 3 dreaded terrorists. That means you hand over these 3 terrorists to us, we are going to release all these hostages. When these 3 dreaded terrorists were released, one among them was Maulana Masood Azhar. He later on founded Jaish-e-Mohammed. And Jaish-e-Mohammed is responsible for the Parliament attack of 2001, responsible for the Uri attack, responsible for the Pathankot attack, responsible for the last year's attack in Pulwama in Jammu and Kashmir as well. If Masood Azhar would have been hanged, ultimately no Jaish-e-Mohammed would have been set up, and we would have in a position to prevent all these terror activities as well. Similarly, another one, Mushtaq Zargar. He was another terrorist released in exchange of these hostages. He later on founded another terror organization in Pakistan. So to prevent these hostage-like situations, let's do one thing: hang those who have been convicted for serious offenses. Another argument, number 5, it gives some sense of closure to the victim's family. That means ultimately this family may not be in a position to see their loved ones again. But if those who have been guilty of committing these atrocities, committing these crimes, when they were being hanged, ultimately this family can get a sense of closure. At last, the justice has been served, and then they can carry on with their normal life routines. That means another argument in favor of capital punishment is, although those who have been killed, we cannot bring those individuals back to life. But one thing it can ensure is that the family of the victim, they will get some sense of closure so that they can get on with their normal life routines. Argument number 6. And this is something that we call a Japanese argument. What is the Japanese argument? Japan also has capital punishment on its law books, on its statute books. But Japan uses capital punishment very rarely. And whenever Japan uses capital punishment, it is reinforced by larger public opinion. How? Japan is a workaholic society. They believe that good things happen to those who do good, bad things happen to those who do bad. This is like a consequentialist argument that you must have read in your ethics lectures. What is this consequentialist argument? What is the consequence of an act? If the consequence of this act is good, then this act is good. If the consequence of this act is bad, then ultimately this act is bad. What is the consequence of the act of death penalty? If the consequence is good, in the sense that good things happen to those who do good, bad things happen to those who do bad, that means if somebody is hanged because this individual was a criminal or a rapist, then it reinforces a belief in the Japanese society that, look, here is a guy who did something wrong, who did bad activities, and something bad is happening to him. That's a consequentialist argument. If capital punishment is retained, and all those who are guilty of raping Nirbhaya, if they are hanged, it will reinforce a belief in the society that if you do good, good things are going to come your way. But if you do bad, bad things are going to come your way. That is the consequentialist argument. And these are the arguments in favor of retaining capital punishment. That is why India should not abolish capital punishment. But there is another argument against capital punishment. What are these arguments against capital punishment? This debate goes back to 1764 when an Italian jurist, Cesare Beccaria, what he did? He published a treatise named An Essay on Crimes and Punishment. In this treatise, Beccaria argues that punishment is an important thing. That means if there are criminals and these criminals have committed acts of crime, they should be punished. If they are not punished, ultimately what will happen? There will be chaos in the society. There will be disorder in the society. Anybody can kill anybody. Anybody can violate anybody else's rights or dignity, for example. Yes, for any crime or a criminal activity, there must be punishment. But what are the objectives of this punishment? There are two objectives. Number one, this punishment must act as a deterrent. Number two, this punishment must reform an offender. Can capital punishment reform an offender? No. Why? Because he is too dead to be reformed. When you kill an individual, how can you reform that individual? That means ultimately this one objective of a punishment, which is to reform an offender, this is not satisfied if we are going to apply capital punishment or death penalty. Second, does capital punishment act as a deterrent? We may not know. Let's look at suicide bombers, for example. Are they scared of death? No, they are scared of getting caught. All these terrorists who storm an army camp, they know for sure that they will not come out alive. That means for one thing, they are sure that they will be dead. So are they scared of death? No. What are they scared of? They're scared of getting caught. That means if we look at these terrorists, when they storm an army camp or they storm a public place, to prevent them from getting caught, they also have cyanide pills with them. This is to ensure that if they are about to get caught, they will take this cyanide pill and ultimately die, so that they are not caught, so that they are not going to leak all the details about their terror organizations to the police. That means terrorists, suicide bombers, they are not scared of death, they are scared of getting caught. Let's look at the data. There are some states in United States which have abolished capital punishment, and there are some states in United States which continue to have capital punishment on their statute books. If you look at the incidence of crime, then if capital punishment acts as a deterrent, then in those states where capital punishment is still available, these states should have shown less number of crimes, less number of murders, less number of homicide rates. But converse is the true. Those states which have abolished capital punishment, far less crimes are recorded and reported in these states. But those states where capital punishment is still a valid form of punishment, there the crime rate is higher than those abolitionist states. That means we know for sure that capital punishment does not act as a deterrent if we look at the data in United States. So best thing that we can say is that the deterrent effect of capital punishment is at best inconclusive. Capital punishment may or may not act as a deterrent. But if we look at the arguments of suicide bombers and terrorists, we can safely assume that death sentence does not act as a deterrent. When it does not act as a deterrent, why retain capital punishment? Lord Macaulay was the architect of Indian Penal Code when it was drafted in 1860s. He writes in the introduction to Indian Penal Code that many individuals approached us and said, when you are punishing murder with murder, that means somebody committing murder, you are hanging that individual, you are imposing death penalty on these individuals. But what about rape? Why is rape not punished with death penalty? Why is dacoity not punished with death penalty? Now rape is also punishable with death. But initially, when Indian Penal Code was drafted, rape was not punishable with death. Macaulay argued that look at the conditions here. You cannot equate murder with rape. You cannot equate murder with dacoity. Why? If somebody is raping a woman, and if the punishment for rape and punishment for murder is same, then what this individual will do? He will rape this woman and then murder her as well. Because in any case, if he is caught, he will be slapped with death penalty. Let's say, for example, dacoity. You are stealing from someone. If the punishment for dacoity is same as that of murder, then what will happen? All those dacoits, they will run away with all your belongings and ultimately kill you as well. Why? Because the punishment is same. So if you look at the argument of Macaulay, he is absolutely clear that death penalty acts as a deterrent. That means if the punishment for rape and murder is the same, ultimately an individual will rape a woman and then kill her as well. But if the punishment for rape is imprisonment, punishment for murder is death, then what will happen? An incentive is provided to a rapist that you should spare the life of all those individuals you have wronged. That means capital punishment, according to Macaulay, acts as a deterrent. But years and years after Indian Penal Code was drafted, the deterrent effect of capital punishment is at best inconclusive. So why retain capital punishment? Let me take you back to Cesar Beccaria. He raises a very important question, a philosophical question. Is it not against the social contract when the state is killing a citizen? Political science students, for example, they would know that there is something called a contract theory. The proponents of this contract theory, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, for example, what they would say, they would talk about the origin of state. They would say that state originated when there was a contract between the citizens and some institution. This institution said, we are going to prevent your loss. We are going to provide you security. In return, what citizens have to do? They will have to pay taxes to the state. But state does not have the right to deprive these citizens of their life. And if the state is depriving an individual of their lives, ultimately it is violation of this social contract, and that is why the state should not be given the power to snatch the lives of their citizens. On top of that, he raises an important question. He says, let's look at this law. Law, for example, Indian Penal Code. What is the objective of Indian Penal Code? To prevent crime, for example, which means to prevent murder. This law, it has the objective of preventing a murder, and at the same time it murders an individual as well. How? Somebody who is committing a murder, you are also murdering that individual, you are also hanging that individual. Bakaria asks, is it not absurd that laws which should detect and punish murder or homicide in order to prevent murder publicly commit murder itself? Is it not absurd according to Cesar Bakaria? If death sentence does not act as a deterrent, then the only logical argument in favor of death sentence is retribution. Retribution is something, eye for an eye. But if you look at Mahatma Gandhi said, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. Even if we take retribution into account, retribution would say, the manner in which you have wronged me, I will inflict the same punishment on you. That is why murder is punishable with death. But rape is not punishable with a counter rape. Or dacoity is not punishable with a counter dacoity. So even this retribution argument is getting violated. Let's look at another argument. There are those who favor capital punishment on the grounds that capital punishment is not awarded in all the cases of crimes, but is awarded only in the rarest of the rare cases. In 1982, in a very famous Bachchan Singh versus State of Punjab, Supreme Court said capital punishment, death sentence should not be awarded in all cases, but should be awarded only in the rarest of the rare cases. But which are these rarest of the rare cases? Supreme Court did not elaborate. Few years later, Supreme Court elaborated. For example, in Machi Singh case, Supreme Court elaborated what is this rarest of the rare case. What Supreme Court said? Whenever you are confronted with a case, draw a balance sheet. Balance sheet of mitigating circumstances and aggravating circumstances. If mitigating circumstances of this case are more, then you should not award death penalty. But if the aggravating circumstances are more, then you should go for a death penalty or capital punishment. What are these mitigating circumstances? They speak in favor of the accused. Let's say, for example, I'm an accused. I killed somebody, but this was my first crime. I am not a habitual criminal. Or I committed this crime in a fit of rage. I was very angry. Or I was stricken with poverty. For example, I approached a shopkeeper. I asked this shopkeeper for a loaf of bread. No, go away. I'm not going to give you anything for free. What I do, in a fit of rage, I kill the shopkeeper. Why? Because my family had not eaten anything for the past 1 week. I asked for a loaf of bread. This was not given to me by the shopkeeper. Instead, he pushed me, abused me. In a fit of rage, I took a knife and I killed the shopkeeper. Does that justify my crime? No. That means punishment should be given to me. But at the same time, don't award capital punishment. Why? Because these are the circumstances which speak in my favor. Highest penalty should not be given to me because I committed this crime, but there are some circumstances which can speak in favor of me. And if these are the circumstances which mitigate the crime, ultimately life imprisonment should be awarded, not capital punishment. But what about aggravating circumstances? Aggravating circumstances speak against the accused. Is there something horrible about the crime? If there is something so horrible about the crime that if you award life imprisonment, it would not be justice. That means if the crime is so severe, if the circumstances of the crime is so severe, if the criminal has the past record of crimes, that means if we are awarding life imprisonment to this individual, it would not be justice. The only justice in such a case would be capital punishment. You must award capital punishment. For example, the Nirbhaya case. It was not just an act of rape. It was a gang rape. Not just an ordinary gang rape. This woman, this poor lady was raped in a moving bus by 5 to 6 individuals. And the grotesque nature of this crime was that an iron rod was inserted into her vagina, which ruptured her intestines as well. So this was not an ordinary crime. The circumstances of this crime makes it something horrible. And if life imprisonment is given to these individuals, it will not be justice. The only justice that we can provide is capital punishment. It's only in these cases, wherever somebody is brought before the judiciary. In Machi Singh case, Supreme Court said, draw a balance sheet. Prepare a list of mitigating circumstances and a list of aggravating circumstances. If mitigating circumstances are more than aggravating circumstances, then give life imprisonment to this individual. But if aggravating circumstances are more than mitigating circumstances and the only logical punishment can be that of a death, then death penalty should be imposed. That means those who are in favor of capital punishment say that we can't misuse capital punishment. Why? Because capital punishment is not awarded in all cases, that too in a blanket way. We award capital punishment only in the rarest of the rare cases. But which are these rarest of the rare cases? I will give you an example. 2013, Justices P. Sathasivam and Justice Khalifullah, they are hearing a case. What is the case all about? An individual, Moninder Singh, he had killed his daughter as well as his wife. Moninder Singh many years ago had raped his daughter. For that rape, the Madhya Pradesh High Court said, this is rarest of the rare case, give death sentence to Moninder Singh. Moninder Singh challenged this death sentence in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, no, this is not the rarest of the rare case. This death sentence should be commuted to life imprisonment. Life imprisonment should be awarded to Moninder Singh. Moninder Singh was serving his time in the jail and ultimately he was released on parole for a few days, because parole is your right. You can be released for a few days. When Moninder Singh was out on parole, he killed the daughter he had raped as well as his wife. Matter again went to the Madhya Pradesh High Court. Madhya Pradesh High Court said, now this is the rarest of the rare case because he was out on parole, and on parole he killed the daughter and his wife. This is rarest of the rare case. Award capital punishment to this individual. Matter went to the Supreme Court on an appeal. Supreme Court said Moninder Singh is not a threat to the society. He may be a threat to his family, but he's not a threat to the society. When he's not a threat to the society, award life imprisonment instead of capital punishment. Rarest of the rare doctrine. February 2013. Same judge is hearing another case. This case, the court has to decide what will happen to this accused. Why? What this accused has done? He has kidnapped a 7-year-old boy, and after kidnapping, he killed this boy as well. Supreme Court said this is rarest of the rare case, imposed death penalty on this individual. Why? Among other things, Supreme Court said, imagine the burden on the family. Imagine the plight of the family who has lost their only male child. So there was a patriarchal argument when the Supreme Court heard this case. If I were to ask you, which one is the rarest of the rare case? Moninder Singh killing his daughter and his wife and previously raping his daughter, or killing or kidnapping a 7-year-old boy? I guess all of you would agree that it is the case of Moninder Singh that should be best described as the rarest of the rare case. That means the problem with rarest of the rare case is that there is no way to determine which are these rarest of the rare cases. It depends upon the whims and the fancies of the judges. That means there are few judges who are against capital punishment. There are few judges who by their ideology are in favor of capital punishment. And if tomorrow I am an accused and I have been produced before a judge bench who is in favor of capital punishment, I will be granted death sentence, rarest of the rare case. But if I am produced before a bench, before these judges who are not in favor of capital punishment, I will be awarded life imprisonment. Is it not violative of Article 14, which talks about equality before law? And this is the question that former Chief Justice of India, Justice P.N. Bhagwati, also raised. Justice P.N. Bhagwati said, am I to live or die depending upon the way benches are constituted from time to time? Is it not violative of the fundamental guarantees enshrined in the Fundamental Rights chapter of Part 3 of the Constitution of India? That means some judges, they won't impose capital punishment. Some judges will impose capital punishment, despite the fact that we don't know what constitutes rarest of the rare cases. This all depends upon the whims and the fancies of the judges. And that is why, precisely because rarest of the rare case doctrine has not been explained by the Supreme Court, capital punishment should be abolished. Or till the time this rarest of the rare doctrine is explained by the Supreme Court, there should be a temporary stay, moratorium on the imposition of capital punishment in India. But perhaps the most logical argument against capital punishment is its irrevocability. Which means, for example, I have been booked for a crime and I have been sentenced to 10 years in jail. 2 years later, it came to light that I'm not guilty, someone else is guilty. What will happen to me? I will be set free. But what if death sentence was imposed to me wrongly? I'm not a criminal, I'm not guilty, I was wrongly charged under this crime, and this capital punishment has been imposed on me, slapped on me, and I have been hanged as well. Can this punishment be revoked? No. But you might argue that this is something that can happen in a Bollywood movie, but may not happen in reality. But it has happened, and Supreme Court has accepted this. In 2009, in a very famous case known as Santosh Kumar Bariyar versus State of Maharashtra, Supreme Court said, all those previous 13 judgments which we have given, where capital punishment was awarded to accused, these 13 judgments have been rendered per incuriam, or in other words, were rendered in ignorance of the law. That means the law was wrongly interpreted in awarding capital punishment. That is why these 13 capital punishments which we have awarded in the past, they are not the law of the land now. They are rendered per incuriam, in absence of the law, in ignorance of the law. But the irony is, 2 out of these 13 convicts were already hanged. So perhaps the most logical argument against capital punishment is that it is irrevocable. Parliament attack convict Afzal Guru was hanged. He was hanged, but he was hanged in secrecy. His mercy petition was rejected by the president, and this was not communicated to Afzal Guru. It was not communicated to his family as well. Family could not meet Afzal Guru before his hanging. And newspaper reports tell us that even Afzal Guru was informed in the morning of his hanging that you are about to be hanged. Ultimately, what happened? He was hanged and he was buried inside the Tihar jail as well. So there was a lot of criticism when Afzal Guru was hanged in 2013, primarily on the grounds that last opportunity was not provided to Afzal Guru so that he could meet his family. Came another important judgment, Shatrughan Singh Chauhan, 2014 versus Union of India. Many argue that this is this 2014 judgment which has humanized capital punishment in India. What Shatrughan Singh Chauhan said? Number one, solitary confinement. What is solitary confinement? That means you are kept in a jail in isolation. You're not allowed to meet anybody. You are kept in a separate cell. This is solitary confinement. Supreme Court said, unless and until your mercy petition has been rejected by the president, you should not be kept in solitary confinement, because even after you have been convicted, even after capital punishment is awarded to you, you still have fundamental rights attached. Number two, when mercy petition is rejected by the president, there is judicial review possible. We will review why president rejected your mercy petition. Third, if there is a delay, or should we say inordinate delay, in deciding your mercy petition, your death sentence will be commuted to life imprisonment. Why? In Shatrughan Singh Chauhan case, 15 convicts, their death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Why? Because president was taking a lot of time in deciding this mercy petition. This period ranged in between 1.5 years to 11 years. That means some petitions were pending before the President of India for 11 years, and he was not deciding whether to accept this mercy petition or reject this mercy petition. But if you look at the constitutional scheme in India, President is a rubber stamp. While deciding upon these mercy petitions, he has to go by the advice of the Ministry of Home Affairs. So it basically means that MHA is not recommending to the president whether these mercy petitions are to be accepted or rejected. And some of these mercy petitions were kept pending before the president for 11 years. Supreme Court said there is an inordinate delay. You're not able to explain what caused this delay. And if there is an inordinate delay, your death sentence will be commuted to life imprisonment. Supreme Court said something else. Minimum 14 days notice should be given to the condemned individual. That means your mercy petition has been rejected. Now for 14 days you cannot be hanged. You have to provide this buffer of 14 days to the accused individual, to the condemned individual. Why? Because in this 14-day period, he will make peace with God. He will seek forgiveness from God. Maybe he will settle his worldly affairs. Provide an opportunity so that this condemned individual is meeting his family members at least once. And at the same time, mental health evaluation. Mental health evaluation should be done by the prison authorities, and if there are individuals who have been condemned to death, if they are suffering from mental illness, for example schizophrenia, they should not be hanged. The death sentence should be commuted to life imprisonment. So here, if the Nirbhaya case convict is claiming mental illness based on this 2014 Supreme Court judgment, if it is conclusively proven by a medical board that indeed this condemned person is suffering from mental illness, his death sentence will be commuted to life imprisonment. A petition has been filed by the central government. What is that petition saying? That all these guidelines of Shatrughan Singh Chauhan versus Union of India, they are convict centric. What we need victim centric guidelines. Why? This is very important in light of the Nirbhaya case. What happens in the Nirbhaya case? There are 4 convicts, 4 condemned individuals. They are to be hanged. Currently, the existing rules say that unless and until all these 4 individuals, they exhaust their legal remedies, no one should be hanged. That means we can't hang them individually because they have been booked under the same case. And if these individuals are to be hanged, all of them must be hanged together. And now these 4 convicts, they are milking these rules. How? First, one accused will file a mercy petition. This mercy petition is rejected. Then another accused will file a mercy petition. Then another accused. Then another accused. Even rejection of mercy petition is subject to judicial review. Then one by one they will file these cases, but not together over a period of time, so that they cause delay. When there is a delay, that means your death sentence can be commuted to life imprisonment. So that is how these 4 convicts are milking and gaming these rules. And that is why the central government is asking the Supreme Court, please issue clarification and make these 2014 rules victim-centric and not convict-centric. What is the center asking? Center is asking that once your review petition is rejected, you can file curative petition, but a time period must be set by the Supreme Court. Within this time period, if you are not filing a curative petition, you will have no remedy available. Change number 2. Mercy petition should be filed before the president within the 7 days when your death warrant is issued by the court. Death warrant is issued by the court, you have 7 days to file a mercy petition before the president. Third change. Within 7 days, when this mercy petition is rejected by the President of India, death warrant should be executed. That means the prisoner, the accused, the condemned should be hanged, regardless of pending legal proceedings against the other co-convicts. What about delay? Can be a potential question in your prelims exam, for example. Is there a time period specified by the Supreme Court that if there is a delay of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years or 10 years, and if there is this inordinate delay, your death penalty will be converted to life imprisonment? Is there a time period? No, there is no time period. So when 15 convicts, their death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, the period of their mercy petition which were pending before the president, the period ranged from 1.5 to 11 years. That means we don't have the specific time period of what constitutes delay, but we know the rationale. Supreme Court said, if there is a condemned person, he has been sentenced to death, but against this capital punishment, he has filed a mercy petition before the president. And if you are delaying this mercy petition, if you are keeping this mercy petition pending, what you are doing, you are subjecting this condemned person to torture because he is dying every single day anticipating his death. This amounts to cruelty, this amounts to torture, and it's violative of Article 21 of the Constitution of India. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article and this concept of death sentence. Now let's look at another issue on page number 9, again relevant for GS paper 2. The former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, he was campaigning for Lok Sabha elections in Tamil Nadu, Siri Perumbudur, when he was attacked and ultimately he was killed. The attackers came from LTTE and there were close to 26 individuals who were arrested. Some of them were acquitted later on, but few individuals such as Nalini and others, they were sentenced to death for conspiring to kill the former Prime Minister. The death sentence of Nalini was commuted to life imprisonment. Why? Because Sonia Gandhi requested for this. Nalini had a small daughter and Sonia Gandhi had mercy on her small daughter and ultimately she requested for clemency. Ultimately, Nalini's death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. This case is related to Nalini. We know for sure that President has some pardoning powers. Governor also has these pardoning powers. But governor cannot pardon the death sentence. Pardoning a death sentence is only the prerogative of the President of India. But what governor can do? Governor can commute this death sentence to life imprisonment. But if somebody is sentenced to life imprisonment, governor can also go for remission. That means this life imprisonment can be converted to an imprisonment of 10 years or 8 years, for example. And here the governor is acting on the aid and advice of Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister. When Nalini, her death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, then she was serving time in a Vellore jail. Then she served 20 years in jail. The then government of Tamil Nadu headed by J. Jayalalitha, she recommended to the governor that now you can set Nalini free. Why? Because she has served 20 years in jail. Normally the life imprisonment is for 14 years. So you can set this individual free. Then there was a clash between the center and the state government of Tamil Nadu. Center's position was that Nalini is booked under TADA, which is basically a central law. So governor's pardoning power does not extend to a central law. Governor can only pardon all those convicts who have been booked under the state law, not the central law. Now this tussle is before the Supreme Court. But interesting thing here is when the Chief Minister and his Council of Ministers are giving some advice to the governor, isn't governor bound by that advice? Similarly, in Maru Ram case, what Supreme Court said? Supreme Court said when an advice is given to the governor, so far as the pardoning powers of the governor are concerned, the state government can set these individuals free even without the signature of the governor. That means when the state government is recommending to the governor that Nalini and 7 other convicts in Rajiv Gandhi assassination case, they are to be set free because they have served their time in jail. We are calling for remission of their sentences. Even without the written signature of the governor, these individuals can be released. But that is why this petition is pending before the court. What the Union Home Ministry has said, that this advice of the state government to the governor is nothing but zero. That means unless and until the Union Ministry of Home Affairs decides something, it cannot be implemented. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at another article. Centre won't dilute Article 371. This is what Home Minister says when he was on a visit to Arunachal Pradesh. But what is this Article 371 for Arunachal Pradesh? Article 371 talks about certain special provisions for some states. Which are these states? Maharashtra, Gujarat, Mizoram, Sikkim, Arunachal, Assam, so on and so forth. For Arunachal Pradesh, what is that special status? For Arunachal Pradesh, what are these special provisions? There are 2 special provisions. Number 1, the Legislative Assembly will have not less than 30 MLAs. What does that mean? Constitution does not specify the strength of a Legislative Assembly. Constitution only talks about a range. What is that range? That minimum MLAs in a Legislative Assembly should be 40. Maximum it can go up to is 500. But a special provision for Arunachal is the State Assembly of Arunachal should not have less than 30 MLAs. Second special provision, law and order of Arunachal Pradesh will be the responsibility of the governor. That's the special provision for Arunachal Pradesh under Article 371. But for Mizoram and Nagaland, the special provisions under Article 371 carry more weight. What is that weight? Any law passed by the parliament, if it affects the social and religious practices of Nagas or people of Mizoram, if it affects the culture of Nagas and the Mizoram, if it affects the civil or criminal justice system of Nagas and the Mizoram tribal area, if this law talks about the land transfer or the sale of land, it will not be applicable to Mizoram and Nagaland unless and until the State Legislative Assembly passes a resolution accepting this law. That's a very important special provision only for Mizoram and Nagaland, which means if Parliament passes a law and this law will have an effect on the land in Mizoram and Nagaland, will have the impact on the social, religious customs of Naga and the Mizoram population, will have the impact on the culture of these two states. This law will not be automatically applicable to these states unless and until the State Legislative Assembly passes a resolution approving this law. And Home Minister says, after the dilution of Article 370, the special status for Jammu and Kashmir, there is no reason for northeastern states to worry. We are not going to touch Article 371. Now let's look at some of the editorials and columns from today's newspaper. The first one, Trump cards. US President and Prime Minister Modi, they are all set to meet for the 5th time in the last 8 months. What's going to be the focus of the meet? Let's look at the key areas. Number one, trade. There were expectations that a trade deal will be signed between the two countries. This, however, looks unlikely. President Trump has repeatedly criticized both India as well as China for what he says that US jobs are stolen by these two countries. What President Trump says, India and China, they are not opening their markets fully for US products. He says the tariffs imposed by India on US products, they are discriminatory. He has repeatedly spoken about Harley Davidson motorcycles. Initially, the import tariff on Harley Davidson motorcycles was 100%. Later on, President Trump says, I called Prime Minister Modi and he slashed this import tariff by 50%. But even this 50% import tariff on Harley Davidson motorcycles by India is unacceptable. He called India the tariff king of the world. Trump last year promised that United States will launch investigation under Section 301 of the US Trade Act of 1974. Under this Section 301 of Trade Act of 1974, the US administration can take an action against another country, including imposition of tariffs on another country's products if this country is restricting US commerce. Administration said since India is restricting US commerce, India is restricting equal access to US products, we are going to launch an investigation under Section 301 of the Trade Act and we will impose tariffs on the Indian goods entering United States. Then what happened? GSP, Generalized System of Preferences status, was revoked to under GSP. If there are some developing countries, for example, India, under GSP, US and other countries, they will import some goods from India, that too at concessional rate. And it is because of GSP that Indian exports would have become competitive in global market. Indian exports to US would increase. And beautiful thing about GSP was that it was non-reciprocal. What does that mean? That means if US is importing some goods, some products from India at concessional rates, it does not mean that India should also import goods from US at concessional rates. That means this GSP was non-reciprocal in its attitude. This GSP status was revoked. And India wants and demands that this GSP status be restored. Another thing is, last week, United States categorized India as a developed nation. And if you're a developed nation, and if you're exporting to United States, but what you are doing, you are subsidizing your exports. If you are subsidizing your exports, that means your exports will become cheaper in United States. That will be a threat to the local products of United States. What US can do, it can impose countervailing duty on these exports. So if you look at trade as one area, there is a lot of strain between India and United States. This editorial says that it would be a setback if some sort of announcement on trade is not made. Second area, if you look at the defense purchases. Cabinet Committee on Security on Wednesday cleared a $2.4 billion deal to purchase 24 US MH-60 Romeo. And these helicopters are basically anti-submarine helicopters. Under the rules, any defense purchase of more than 1,000 crore, Cabinet Committee on Security approval is a must. Can be an important statement for your prelims examination. This Romeo helicopter deal is big. Why? Because Chinese submarines, they are frequenting the Indian Ocean. Right now what we are using Boeing P-8I aircraft to keep a check on enemy submarines. But these Boeing P-81 helicopters, they operate from land. That is why these Romeo helicopters are very, very important for India. Another focus area of this meet is going to be on Indo-Pacific strategy. If you look at Chinese investments in Indian Ocean, in Pacific region, they're huge. US is also wary of Chinese influence in this region. That is why US wants to partner with Japan, Australia, as well as India to counter the Chinese influence in the Indian Ocean. That will be another focus area of Trump Prime Minister Modi meet. Then Afghanistan's future. It looks certain that there is going to be some sort of peace deal between the Taliban and the United States. And if there is a peace deal between Taliban and United States, that means US may fully withdraw from Afghanistan. When US will fully withdraw from Afghanistan, that means Taliban would be in a position to come to power in Afghanistan. But Taliban and India, they don't see eye and eye. India is still considering Taliban as a terrorist entity. Having another hostile neighbor apart from Pakistan is going to be a big challenge for India. And if there is a peace deal between Taliban and United States, who has facilitated these talks? Pakistan. And Taliban is under the grip of Pakistan and its secret agency, Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI. It's going to be another security challenge for India. That means if this Taliban deal goes through, what Pakistan will do, instead of focusing on Pak-Afghanistan border, it will start focusing again on Pakistan-India line of control. So we will see more and more terrorist insurgencies and terrorist attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. So it is expected that Prime Minister Modi will talk about India's security concerns vis-a-vis Afghanistan as well. Let's wait for the visit to get over, then we will have an elaborate discussion on what transpired in this Donald Trump Prime Minister Modi meeting. Now let's look at Art of Life editorial. What is artificial insemination? Is the deliberate introduction of sperm into a female cervix through means other than a sexual intercourse. That means one way of introducing sperm in a woman's cervix is sexual intercourse. Is there another way? Artificial insemination. That means collection of sperm and then introducing it into the cervix. This is artificial insemination. Then we have IVF, in vitro fertilization. Mature female eggs, they are collected, or the better term is they are retrieved. And then these female eggs or mature female eggs, they are fertilized. Fertilized by the sperm of the man, but where? In a lab. This fertilized egg or embryo is then transferred to the uterus of a woman. This is what we call in vitro fertilization. Then we have something called surrogacy, which we have discussed in the past. What if a woman is not in a position to conceive, deliver a child? Then this fertilized egg or embryo will be introduced into the uterus of another woman. This time this woman is called a surrogate woman. This is surrogacy. Why are we discussing this? Surrogacy artificial insemination, in vitro fertilization. All of them what we call assisted reproductive techniques. And for that, there is a bill that has been cleared by the Union Cabinet. This editorial says, although this ART bill should have been cleared much before the surrogacy bill was passed, because surrogacy bill has been passed by Lok Sabha, it is pending in the Rajya Sabha. We also know that there are going to be amendments, Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, under which the proposal is that up to 24 weeks, the fetus can be aborted, because right now the limit is 20 weeks. You can abort a fetus up to 12 weeks and only one doctor's permission or consent is required. But if the pregnancy is between 12 to 20 weeks, then you'd need the consent from two doctors. The panel of two doctors, sometimes three doctors, should certify whether abortion is necessary or not. But the bill says that abortion period should be increased to 24 weeks as well. So this is the entire bouquet of laws or entire bouquet of legislation that will have positive impact on the reproductive rights and choices of women in India. This bouquet also includes Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act. For example, if ultrasound is conducted, you cannot go for sex determination. Determining the sex of the fetus before the delivery is a crime. Louis Brown in 1970, she became the first test tube baby. Few months later in 1978, Kanupriya Agarwal became the first test tube baby of India, and the doctor responsible for that was Kolkata-based Subhash Mukhopadhyay or Subhash Mukherjee. There is a research conducted by Ineto. It's a Bangalore-based medical technology company. It says 10 to 15% of married couples, they face infertility. When they face infertility, such couples, they end up taking services of unregulated ART labs, artificial reproductive techniques labs. Now this bill, ART bill, it proposes to regulate these unregulated ART labs. A national board is to be set up. This national board, what it will do? This national board will lay down rules such as what should be the physical infrastructure in all these ART labs, in all these clinics, labs required, diagnostic equipment required, that will be prescribed by this national board. Manpower, employees required for all these ART labs, that will be prescribed by national boards. This bill also says that once this law is passed, states as well as union territories, they will constitute their own boards. And what these boards will do, at the state level, they will regulate these clinics, but on the basis of the policies laid down by this national board. Most significantly, this bill, it recommends punishment, also jail term, if somebody violates these provisions. This editorial is all praise for these legislations and says this is the best chance to eliminate exploitation in this field. That is what you need to know from this editorial. Now let's look at this column. Aam Aadmi Party came to power with a thumping majority, bagging 62 of the 70 seats in Delhi Legislative Assembly elections. Many people call this election as a referendum on Aam Aadmi Party's policies on education, health, as well as something called freebies. What are these freebies? Free electricity up to a certain point, free water supply up to a certain point, massive investment in health and education. Some people call these measures as welfare measures, others call them freebies. Few years ago, Supreme Court said these freebies, they shake the root and cause of free and fair elections in India. So what are freebies and how are these freebies different from welfare measures? And is it that some people may call them freebies but others may call them welfare measures? And that is what these two women talk about and they discuss. If Aam Aadmi Party won the Delhi election because of its contribution in health and education sector, don't call them freebies. Why? Because it is the fundamental obligation of the government to provide health and good education to its citizens. So don't call them freebies. Second, if we are offering water and electricity free or at subsidized rates, this is again the fundamental obligation on part of the government. Calling them freebies is demeaning them. And this was similar thing was done to Maganrega. When Maganrega says 100 days employment is a guaranteed right, is a statutory right for people in the rural India, we call them freebies. It is not a freebie. Why? Because we are raising the level of the people. We are giving money in the hands of the people, and they're not doing anything for free. They are going to create assets for us in the form of ponds, in the form of wells, in the form of roads in rural India. So ultimately, don't call them freebies. These are welfare measures on par the state. But are these welfare measures fiscally viable? That means it should not happen that more and more welfare measures are given by the state governments and ultimately they enter into debt. There is fiscal deficit problem later on, which ultimately boomerangs on the economy as well. These two women argue that for a state such as Delhi, for a union territory such as Delhi, this is fiscally viable because Delhi has a good revenue capacity as well. And if drinking water, electricity, public transport, education, health are provided at subsidized rates to the people, these are what we call merit goods. And it is good that the state government is implementing all these measures. There is another good argument in favor of these welfare measures. Let's say, for example, women are provided pink slips so that they can travel in the government buses without paying any fare. What will happen to these women? They will save money. When they will save money, this will be basically some sort of a disposable money. So this money that they are going to save, or the money that they are going to save because of less electricity due or less water due or less fee in an educational institution, this disposable money that they will have, they are going to spend this money on something else. Buy toothpaste, for example. It's for the first time in many decades that toothpaste sales have reduced. And we have seen that problem right now is the demand problem. That means people are not demanding goods and services. So if the money that these individuals are saving, this is basically disposable income. This disposable income will in turn be used to fuel demand. And ultimately in the current economic slowdown, this is going to be a very good mechanism to take India out of economic slowdown. But these welfare measures are different from the welfare measures that we see in Tamil Nadu. For example, the Dravidian parties, AIADMK, DMK, what they promise free juicer, mixer, grinder to the people. They promise television, TV sets. They promise washing machines, for example, to the electorate. Are these not freebies or are these welfare measures? These two women, they argue that these are welfare measures. Why? Because when juicer, mixer, grinder is given to women in Tamil Nadu, for example, it ultimately is a time-saving mechanism for them. They will save a lot of time so that this time that they save, they may utilize the time saved in some other productive mechanisms, in some other productive things. And this is particularly important in a state such as Tamil Nadu, where the rice is always being ground to make idli or dosa. Similarly, for example, politicians are giving away cycles to girls. Is this a freebie or is this a welfare measure? They argue that it's a welfare measure. Why? Because mobility for a girl child is very important. And if cycles are given to them, it will increase their mobility and ultimately problem solved. We have also witnessed something else. Groping. A woman boards a bus, which is a crowded bus, and there are miscreants. They grope this poor lady. Ultimately, to save this problem from recurring, why can't girls be facilitated that you should have your own mode of transport? And providing scooties and cycles is not a freebie, it's a welfare measure. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper column. Now let's look at the practice questions, first for prelims and then for mains. Consider the following pairs, newspaper and who is the founder. Samvad Kaumudi, the founder is Raja Ram Mohan Roy, correct? Shom Prakash, no, the founder is not Devendranath Tagore, the founder is Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. Indian Mirror was founded by Devendranath Tagore. So which of the above pairs are correctly matched? It's A, only one. Second, which of the following report is not published by the World Economic Forum? It's the WEO, World Economic Outlook, because it is published by IMF, International Monetary Fund. Question number 3. Consider the following Indian cities. Which of these cities mentioned above lies south of the Tropic of Cancer? Let's look at the map. Ahmedabad or Gandhinagar, Bhopal, yes, Ranchi, yes, these lie to the south of Tropic of Cancer. But if you look at other cities, for example, Aizawl or Agartala, they lie to the north of. Question number 4. Someswari, Zinziram, and Kalu rivers flow through which of the following states of India? Meghalaya. Question number 5. Fedor is? It's a Russian humanoid robo which was sent on an experimental mission to International Space Station in 2019. So A is the correct answer. Mains based questions. Answer should it be. Let's look at the mains based questions. Answer should not be more than 200 words. Number 1. Not all subsidies are justifiable and affordable. Subsidies are hard to shed once committed and so end up squeezing other, more useful spending. Critically analyze. Question number 2. There is no principle underpinning the death penalty in India today except vengeance. And vengeance is no principle at all. Comment. That is it from our newspaper analysis for today. Thank you for being with us. Have a great day.